My wife had been a godsend since I was sick. My doctors were really stumped at first, but we figured it out. The doctor prescribed me a medicine to take every 6 hours. It's supposed to help with the pain. My wife is an excellent nurse. At first, I hated to have her do it. My illness was turning me into a person I didn't recognize. Moody, temperamental, and very impatient. But my wife just kept going, giving me these tiny blue and green pills that would cure my ails. But my symptoms worsened. My nose started to bleed profusely. My wife left a message with the doctor, but no response. I started developing bruises and my stomach was always upset. The doctor apparently thought this could be solved with an increase in medicine, so I began taking it every 4 hours. I smiled pitifully at my wife, thanking her for her devotion and swallowing that bluish pill. She ran a gentle hand through my hair. A fistful of hair came out along with it. I cried and cried, but I really just needed to be alone. I sent my wife to the store. A few minutes after she left, I realized I needed to take a dose. I weakly climbed out of bed and made it to the medicine cabinet. There were my little blue pills scattered loosely around the cabinet. I grabbed the pill bottle and unscrewed the cap so I could dump them back in. And that's when I saw it. My pills were white. The shed was old and weather-beaten and leaned to one side. It sat at the furthest edge of the backyard, backed up into the thick woods that designated the end of the Warrens' property. The only thing contemporary about the shack was the deadbolt lock meant to keep out everyone but the family patriarch Jack Warren, who guarded its contents as if it were precious religious artifacts. 10-year-old Evan Warren knew the rule about staying away from the shed, but being a kid, he was achingly curious about what his father was hiding. Mother never talked about it, and always changed the subject when the shed was mentioned. Evan and his younger brother Jeb were playing catch in the backyard on a crisp fall day when Jeb missed the pass and the ball tumbled across the grass, coming to a stop near the shed door. When Evan went to retrieve the ball, he noticed that the door was ajar. "Whoa," said Evan as Jeb joined him. "Look." Dad must have forgot to lock it. "Come on," urged Evan. "Let's check it out." "No way, Dad will skin us alive if we go in there." "Chicken, I'm going in." A frightened Jeb ran back to the house without looking back. That night, Jeb came downstairs to dinner and saw 3 place settings instead of 4. His mother's eyes were red, as if she'd been crying. His father was carving a roast. "Where's Evan?" Jeb asked. "Don't know anyone named Evan," answered his father. "And neither do you." Since the atmosphere changed, the land dried up. Farming was basically impossible, and people were starving. Andrea held the bundle tightly, racing deeper into the house to hide it. She could hear the footsteps outside, the telltale crunch of arid landscape. They were getting closer. The Wanderers. The Wanderers traversed the land looking for food. They were vicious. They would kill for beans. Andrea shuddered, feeling a nervous trickle of sweat skate down her spine. When she reached the closet, she knelt down and pried open a trapdoor with her broken, bloody fingernails. She laid her bundle on the floor of the trapdoor and covered it. She raced back to the living room, just as the wanderers broke down the door. "Heard you had food," one said, licking his lips. Andrea shook her head vigorously. A jagged, toothy smile lit his face as he reached out his trembling hand to point. "You lie!" he hissed. "I have nothing!" They stomped through the house. Finding nothing, they turned to leave. A baby's cry broke through the silence. He smiled. "I knew you had food." It was 1 a.m. and Guy Halverson sat in his dark living room. The accident early that evening kept playing over and over in his mind. The light turned red, but he was in a hurry and accelerated. An orange blur came from his right, and in a split second, there was a violent jolt. Then the bicyclist rolled across his hood and fell out of sight on the pavement. Horns blared angrily, and he panicked, stepping on the gas and screeching away from the chaos into the darkness, shaken and keeping an eye on his rearview mirror until he got home. "Why did you run, you idiot?" he thought to himself. He'd never committed a crime before this and punished himself by imagining years in jail, his career gone, his family gone, his future gone. Why not just go to the police right now? You can afford a lawyer. Then, someone tapped on the front door, and his world suddenly crumbled away beneath him. They found me. There was nothing he could do but answer it. Running would only make matters worse. His body trembled. He got up, went to the door, and opened it. A police officer stood under the porch light. "Mr. Halverson?" asked the grim officer. He let out a defeated sigh. "Yes, I'm terribly sorry, but I'm afraid I have some bad news. Your son's bike was struck by a hit-and-run driver this evening. He died at the scene. I'm very sorry for your loss." I'm so tired. I'm starting to drift in and out of sleep without noticing. Sometimes I'll be wide awake, and suddenly I find myself in the kitchen with no recollection of how I got there. Was I asleep? My mind isn't registering sleep at this point. I don't ever remember my dreams. I used to have terrible night terrors, but I'm pretty sure those have been over for years now. I certainly wouldn't know now that I can't even recall going to sleep. Have you ever had a lucid dream? You know you're dreaming, and you can do things in your dreams you couldn't do in real life. The last dream I remember is one where I was cooking. I was in the kitchen, slicing up vegetables on the mandolin. It hardly registered that I cut part of my finger until I saw it on the board. Horrified, I looked back at my hand. The finger had regenerated, but felt extremely warm. I remember laughing. I knew I was dreaming and began thinking I could do whatever I wanted because I could regenerate. I cringed as I tested this theory by cutting off a whole finger. When I looked back at it, there it was, attached to my hand, but feeling so hot. The next test was to see if I could fly. Something I always wanted to try, but I would need to get to the roof first. I only made it a small distance before I was slipping on a wet spot. Slamming my head against the floor, I woke up out of my dream. In the kitchen, in a pool of blood, with 2 missing fingers. The antique mirror couldn't have been more perfect for the wall above her bedroom dresser. It took Janine 3 months of searching to find just the right one after her ex took the previous mirror out of spite. Prick, she thought, smiling. You lose. That night, her Kindle on her lap, a glass of wine on the bedside table, Janine relaxed against the pillows, engrossed in her latest novel. Her phone rang and she checked the number. It was her ex, Randy. Her eyes rolled and she disconnected, not in the mood for any more drama. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw a shadow move in the mirror. The only light in the room was from a small lamp on a bedside table, and she got up and went to her new purchase. At first, everything seemed as it should, but soon, an image formed of her ex-husband sitting on the bed, holding a handgun, and looking agitated. Her eyes widened and she turned around, but no one was there. And when she turned back, the image was gone. As a person who believed in premonitions, Janine called her ex back, but there was no answer. Panicked, she dialed 911 and told the dispatcher she thought Randy might be suicidal. He was a prick, but they had history, and she didn't want to see him do this. 15 minutes passed, and a phone rang. This is Officer Duncan. Miss Milano, we've located your ex-husband's car. Yes? She asked, watching the doorknob turn. It's parked in front of your house.